Hey folks, Seth Leibson here. It's that time of year again. Guns Etc. huge anniversary event. This year it's on Saturday, October 24th only. There'll be tons of giveaways and one-day only discounts in the store. Over the years, this event has turned into a gathering of folks who love America and the right to bear arms. As you know, our world may dramatically change on November 3rd. Can you imagine what a Biden-Harris administration will do to the Second Amendment then? If you're concerned about that, make sure you visit Guns Etc. on Saturday, October 24th. For more information, go to gunsetcetera.com. And if you like these monologues, please subscribe to 960 The Patriots YouTube channel.
Well, welcome back Wednesday, October 21st, 2020. Having raised the last 2 days here the two ideological challenges to the West and to America, Marxism and fascism, as well as their domestic adherence and comfort not only in but by the Democratic Party, listener Jeremy in Mesa asked the natural question yesterday. What do you say to those who claim it's worth trying here because it's been imperfectly tried everywhere else it's failed? In other words, the problem isn't the ideology, but its practice. How to answer? First, let me note, not every advocate of socialism in America even goes that far. You will note or remember Bernie Sanders, twice the runner-up for the Democratic Party's nomination for president, and the U.S. Senator who now not only promotes the Joe Biden candidacy, but signed a memorandum of policy understanding with him. He never went that far. And let me note in passing, though Joe Biden denies he signed a manifesto with Bernie Sanders, it is well available on his campaign's website. It's titled, quote, Biden-Sanders Unity Task Force Recommendations, close quote. Its opening section is all about green energy and is signed off by Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. It also speaks, of course, of systemic racism 6 times. It's quite a document. But in any event, as I was saying, not even Bernie Sanders goes so far as to couch his socialist desiderata here in the standard form of it failed because it was imperfectly deployed. He actually has praised the Soviet Union when there was a Soviet Union. He actually has said breadlines are a good thing. He has gone out of his way, even when advised not to praise Castro's and Cuba. So much for the idea that it's failed everywhere else because it was not done right. He thinks it succeeded elsewhere. He has even praised the economic programs of Venezuela. But to those who do fit Jeremy's description, what do we say to those who argue it just wasn't done right elsewhere? And I think Irving Kristol answered it best some years ago in an essay titled Socialism, the Obituary of an Idea. There he wrote, quote, true, there is a dwindling band of socialist fideists who keep insisting that we must not judge socialism by any of its works. The Soviet Union, they tell us, is not socialist at all, nor is China or Yugoslavia or Cuba or Hungary or all those other people's democracies. Neither, of course, are such regimes as existed in Peru or Syria or Zaire, whose claims to socialist legitimacy are not to be taken seriously. As for Western countries with social democratic governments, such as Britain or Sweden, well, they get a passing grade for effort, but it seems they are insufficiently resolute or intelligent enough to bring true socialism about. This is all quite ridiculous, of course. Socialism is what socialism does. The plaintive lament of the purist that socialism, or for that matter, capitalism or Christianity, has never really been tried, is simply the expression of petulance and obstinacy on the part of ideologues who, convinced that they have a more profound understanding than anyone else of the world and its history, now find that they have been living a huge self-deception. People who persist in calling themselves socialist while decrying the 3/4 of the world that has proclaimed itself socialist, and who can find a socialist country nowhere but in their imaginings, such people are anachronisms. As such, they do serve a purpose. They help the historian and scholar understand and what socialists used to think socialism was all about. One could discover that from reading books, to be sure, but it's sometimes enlightening to interview an actual survivor. Now, you know what's interesting in passing? You never hear anyone in or on the left accept the view that certain religions have never really been tried,
or that the free enterprise system has never really been tried. No, rather, they look at America, find its failings, and then look to the ideological and economic programs of China, or the Soviet Union, or Venezuela, or Cuba, and say, let's try that here, only better, to fix America. The other interesting thing about that intellectual curiosity is that the left has spent over 70 years opposing the idea that America should be tried in those countries. And instead, as I say, even today, they say those countries' philosophies should be tried here. If that doesn't tell you how very warped their worldview is and how invincible their ignorance of reality is, I don't know if anything can. But the warning, take them seriously, because they take these ideas seriously, and they take what they want to do to you with them seriously. This, of course, is not a battle of first impression. The fight against Marxism in any of its guises used to be known as the Long Twilight Struggle. That was John Kennedy's phrase. It began somewhere around the Iron Curtain speech when we were first seriously warned about it by Winston Churchill in 1946, the same year Congress started investigating communism in America. And it ended with, or I should say culminated with, the presidency of Ronald Reagan. You may recall, he actually thought we could win this twilight struggle. That was one of the unique things about his candidacy and presidency. Until then, Republicans generally thought we could or should manage or live with the twilight struggle. And Democrats thought, somewhere beginning in the early 1970s, though there were surrendered to it. The difference between the Democratic Party of 1960 and 1972 is really quite amazing, as was the party's thwarting of every single Reagan foreign policy initiative a decade later, which was the decade Bernie Sanders started arriving on the scene to ply his trade. What you never saw then, but we take as normal or commonplace now, is the naturalness of it all. Socialism here, socialist members of Congress here, they're given glossy magazine covers, endorsements from the mainstream of the Democratic Party in the media, and it's all so very ho-hum, as if not abnormal, to say nothing of execrable. Take the lead signatory of the Biden-Sanders Joint Memorandum of Political Understanding, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, a boasted member of the Democratic Socialists of America, the successor organization to the Socialist Party of America. Rashida Tlaib is also a member. One might want to spend some time on the DSA website, as I have two fears. One is people have not spent time there and know not of what socialism brewed up for America is or would look like. The other fear, just as strong, is that people have read it and agree with it. There's a lot there, but I was recently moved to look at their page on decolonization. Why? Go back to Sunday and Monday and the profile and promotion on CBS of BLM movement founder Alicia Garza. The DSA website tells us America is a colonialist power. And I thought it interesting in looking at Alicia Garza's new book CBS was promoting, because it was not her first book. She wrote the foreword 2 years ago to a book titled, quote, Revolution in the Air, 60s Radicals Turn to Lenin, Mao, and Che, close quote, Che Guevara. So much for thinking they were the imperfect and failed practitioners of Marxism. Turns out, if you understand Alicia Garza and the left today, as the book says, Lenin, Mao, and Che Guevara were the standards and touchstones. Indeed, in her foreword, Ms. Garza laments that the left cowers about and does not take her examples, Fidel Castro and Hugo Chavez, seriously enough. Why did Maoism fail? Well, the book tells us. Mao Zedong died. It failed because he died, not because it, well, failed and killed tens of millions of innocents along the way. Mao was a success to our left-wing Americans, or at least to the BLM co-founder, who the left embraces and touts so highly. Mao's failure was only in his ceasing to exist. So why was I struck by what the Democratic Socialists of America say about America being a colonialist country? Because her BLM co-founder, Patrisse Cullors, writes a great deal about colonialism, celebrating especially the work of Frantz Fanon. You also can read about Alicia Garza praising the work of Frantz Fanon. Who was Fanon? His most famous book, The Wretched of the Earth, says this, quote, 2 centuries ago, a former European colony decided to catch up with Europe. It succeeded so well that the United States of America became a monster in which the taints, the sickness, and the inhumanity of Europe have grown to appalling dimensions. Close quote. The United States is not only a colonialist power, but a monster, according to the Marxist theorist and hero of Garza, Couleurs, and today's left and Democratic Party that embraces them, and CBS. All this piqued my interest, especially because I recall reading The Wretched of the Earth in college. And the only thing everybody knows about that book is that Jean-Paul Sartre wrote the introduction. And it was in that introduction that we learned a terrorizing thing. Sartre, like Fanon, believes that human beings become actualized and fully human by becoming revolutionaries, violent revolutionaries. Sartre writes, quote, he, Fanon, shows clearly that this irrepressible violence is neither sound and fury, nor the resurrection of savage instincts, nor even the effect of resentment. It is man recreating himself. I think we understood this truth at one time, but we have forgotten it, that no gentleness can efface the marks of violence, only violence itself can destroy them. The native cures himself of colonial neuroses by thrusting out the settler through the force of arms. When his rage boils over, he rediscovers his lost innocence, and he comes to know himself, and that he himself creates his self, close quote. That should dry the saliva in your mouth. If that doesn't, try this, quote, the rebel's weapon is the proof of his humanity. For in the first days of the revolt, you must kill. To shoot down a European is to kill 2 birds with 1 stone, to destroy an oppressor and the man he oppresses at the same time. And there remain a dead man and a free man. The survivor for the first time feels a national soil under his foot. I read this the first time in the 1980s, realizing 2 things. A, America was so oppressive it published this book. B, this more than anything else helps explain and define terrorism. But it took me a little longer to realize 2 more things. C, they think America is a just target of or for this behavior. And finally, D, we ignore it at our peril. And too many are ignoring it when they aren't praising it. You can call me crazy for taking this so seriously, but let me just say something about that. They take it more seriously, and they tell us all the time. When will we start to listen? As the old folk song goes, when will we ever learn?